Welcome to the Lawless Astrology channel. My name is Dabney and I'm an evolutionary astrologer. Today we're going to be talking about the Mars opposition to Pluto, and we're going to be talking about the volcanoes erupting in our own personal lives and on the world stage. And we are going to be looking at the best way to deal with this energy. So if you are new here, what we do is we look to the planetary energies and the cosmos, and we figure out how we can use that energy most consciously down here on planet Earth to live a more peace-filled life. It doesn't feel like peace is reigning right now. It feels like there's lava rocks and lava raining. And so let's unpack that together. So if that's content that you're interested in, I hope you stick around. So welcome. So, another week. This one is going to be an interesting one. So, let's just first talk about fear. Because I know that last week was a tough week. I feel like maybe we got a little bit of a break over the weekend, at least I did. But astrologically as well. And then the end of this week, starting on the 19th, but we're already sort of in the realm of it, we're going to have the third and final pass of that Mars opposition to Pluto. So, and then that'll be making a T-square to the Sun and Neptune. That's a whole other thing. But I'm going to kind of talk about all of the energy during this time and what it portends and really, kind of the cosmic weather. So, Mars is the planet of assertion. It is the planet of, this is what I want. It's the planet of getting your needs met. It is the planet of action. Pluto is the planet of transformation. Pluto is the planet of destruction and resurrection. So this weekend, we're going to have the Mars opposing that Pluto. And that's kind of combustible energy. It's kind of explosive energy because we have this sort of very powerful, I want this now, kind of hurried, impatient, action-oriented planet opposing, which is can be a stressful, tension-filled aspect, the god of the underworld, the one that says, I am going to make big changes because big changes are needed. And that's going to be a long process. So as many of us know, Pluto entered Aquarius November 30th. Okay, so it's going to be there 20 years. November 30th, even though it feels like 4 years ago, it was more like 4 months ago. It was just months ago. It wasn't that long ago. Mars has been moving retrograde. It's been in the sign of Cancer. There's been a lot of talk on the astrology channels about this Mars and how this Mars has been, doing a lot. Moving back into Cancer. Now it's moving into Leo. It is forward. All of the planets are in a forward momentum right now, which is good in some ways because it's okay, things are finally here. We can deal with them. And yet, it also means things are here. We have to deal with them. So, Mars is moving into the sign of Leo. Leo, on the high side, is about leadership. And it is about creativity and self-expression. On the low side, Leo can be very egotistical. Mars in Leo on the shadow can be narcissism, very self-centered, just egomaniacal, unfortunately. Kind of like this mixture of I want with I'm the king. I know everything, right? I've got all the answers because everything revolves around me. Okay. Then we have this Pluto energy, which, like I said, the Pluto in Aquarius has a lot of positive potentials, but it also has some shadow. And a lot of the shadow has to do with the darker side of technology. It has to do with sort of exposing where we think that we are not even human. Really, it's that sort of, what's good for the collective? But it's not heart-centered. Pluto in Aquarius is not necessarily heart-centered. It's more like we want to do its best for everyone. But who gets to decide that? And so this oppositional energy of I'm the king versus this, like, well, we have to do what's best for everyone, can be explosive. And we are seeing it. We're seeing in real time these big changes, this action that is kind of coming in and destroying everything. So in my own personal life, and you may be able to relate to this, I just went to film a video with Ronnie Pontiac and Zoom was down. And there was nothing on the internet about that, which is shocking, right? Like, it took a good 40 minutes before it was actually reported in the media. Now, as a PR person, I can tell you that's absurd. There were no statements from the company. There was no proactive social media posts. I mean, so we're talking about, like, for me, that feels like an alternate universe, because I've done crisis PR for companies. I know, like, I have companies much smaller than Zoom that have much less of an impact when it's down. And we are always, like, on it. We would send out a message and we would send something to the press. Like, you know, so there's this sense of, like, things aren't working the way they used to work. And then I got a text saying a medication for someone in my family will no longer be available, with no other further information. And these just, like, all happened at the same time. And they just seemed to me like perfect canary in the coal mine kind of things, where it's like, oh, I have to figure this out. I've got to figure out how I'm going to get this person a different medication. You know, my mother, as I've spoken about, lives in an assisted living facility, and, you know, the pendant she wears to call and get help stopped working, and no one gave her a new one, and for days. And there was just sort of like this feeling that, like, my mom was on her own until I, like, dealt with it. But the point being, like, I had to figure out that Zoom was down. I had to figure out, and I had to, like, rejigger everything. And I think we're going to see more of that. I think that this is just the beginning. I think it's really easy to come in and break everything. And intellectually, I think we all understand that that's bad. I think most of us are fearful of the consequences of that, because we can see into the future, and, you know, we live our lives in such a way that we know that action results in consequences, but not everyone apparently see things that way. And so I think, you know, as these consequences of our institutions and the things that we have come to rely on begin to actually fall apart and fall away, we are left with the knowledge, or the true inner knowing. We are on our own. We have to figure this out. No one's coming to save us. Now, my teeny little examples are fine. They're new nuisances, right? But these nuisances have been piling up as our institutions have been failing for several years now. And it's just going to accelerate because there weren't people actively destroying things, whereas there are now. Now, I bring all of this up. What does this have to do with astrology, right? I bring this up because I think that we are coming into a time where suddenly there's going to be these sort of like volcanic eruptions. There's going to be these more consequential things that actually have a more immediate impact. So you can cut money from, HHS, and you can cut research funds and may not feel that for years. You can cut vaccines, but if there's not currently a pandemic or something that is needed for it, although I know that there is a measles outbreak and there's things happening, but my point being, like, there are things that are happening now that will have consequences many years from now. I think what's coming in the next few days, astrologically speaking, there will be a more immediate impact. That is that Mars opposition to the Pluto. So the last time we had the Mars opposition to the Pluto, it was right around the election. So this is the third and final pass. And then Mars is not retrograding again. It's staying in Leo. Okay. So there is this sense of a battle, a combustion, something explosive taking place that impacts leadership versus the collective. And so as that happens, what do we do? What do you do if there is suddenly Pompeii? And this is not to predict or to scare you. This isn't to say, like, build a bunker. Like, this is more of okay, this is happening. There is something combustible. So, it could manifest in so many different ways that I would hate to predict it. But my point being is there is something that happens that may feel very jarring in the coming week. It feels like there's something jarring every day, but I guess the jarring thing can actually have consequences in the moment. And sometimes that is needed to put us back onto the right path, because clearly we're not on a very sustainable or good path right now. So that is a higher manifestation of that. Another higher manifestation of this, and I just went on Susan Lynn's channel and I talked about this, is like you're seeing leaders emerge. You're seeing people get a backbone to fight for the collective, which is the highest energy of this. You're seeing people, no longer deer in the headlights, but rather saying, like, I'm going to fight back. I'm taking action. There are protests. There are things happening. And I think there's going to be an acceleration of that too. So it's not all bad. But I guess what I wanted to talk a little bit about on this video is the concept of fear. Because Mars opposition to Pluto can be incredibly fearful. And fear has a lot of different manifestations, right? Anger is one of them. You've heard this, I'm sure, that anger is just an outward expression of fear, right? So what are we fearful of? And that's one of the root things that we need to get grounded into. But there are different reactions to fear. There's flight, there's paralyzation, there's fighting, right? Like there's running away. That's my personal favorite. And so, what do we do when we have this sort of sixth sense? And I know a lot of people that watch this channel do have that sort of higher intuition and sixth sense that things aren't right. Well, we breathe. That's the number one thing that we can do. We breathe and we get centered. Because some of the things that are taking place are fated and out of our control. And they may end up on a bit in the bigger scheme of things be something that is more helpful, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. So that's the one thing that I want to get across to you, is that like we don't know the end of this story. I never pretend to know what's going to happen. I just know cosmically what the energy is. And the energy is that of consequences. So there can be some F around and find out. There can be more drastic action. There can be actual like pulling together and, new leadership and people saying no more. So all of those things are possibilities. But I like to sometimes think of like the worst case scenario, because if I can project into that worst case scenario and I can breathe into it, then I can know that I am going to be okay. That is where we have to be right now, is to understand that from a bigger picture, there is more going on beneath the surface than we recognize, and that is a volcano as well. A volcano can lay dormant for a really long time and then explode. And there is so much in that volcano. It can feel endless. And that's a little bit of what this energy is like the volcano is erupting, but we have shelter. We are safe. We are all in it together. So if the volcano does erupt, we can take that opportunity to see where in our own lives fear has held us back. Where is fear holding us back currently? What can we do to move forward with more grace? Every time I have had some sort of major life-changing event, it has taught me so much about myself. I think that is the Aries energy, the Neptune in Aries and coming up Saturn in Aries. It's going to be a lot more about relying on ourselves. And that doesn't mean like not having community, but it's kind of this sense of when you don't believe that someone's coming to rescue you, I assume like things are going to be the way they always are. I log on, it tells me that Zoom is down, it tells me it's going to be back up in an hour, and then I go about my life. When there is no information, when there's no anything there to sort of ground me back into what to do next, I have to figure it out on my own, which can potentially make me stronger, more spiritual. It can help me understand my own resources. So I think that's where we're at. We're at a time where each and every one of us is being gifted with the potential to see what we are really made of. What's worth fighting for? What do we truly care about? What are our gifts and talents? How do we handle challenging situations? And how do we move past them? How do we move through them? How do we help others? I think that's where we're at. So as we move through whatever comes in the next week, which my guess is there's going to be some shocking news, but that's really not that earth-shattering because there's been shocking news daily for weeks now. So not exactly like the coolest crystal ball in the world, but energetically, astrologically, I will say that we might be in for some shocks, and I dare not say exactly what those are. I have ideas. But we have free will, and it can go so many different ways. But no matter what way it goes, there's an opportunity for you to lean into your fear, to find your courage, and to learn more about who you are. And there's a lot of opportunity here for self-discovery, and that self-discovery was what's going to propel you forward as we move into the future, as we move into a much more self-reliant time, as we move into a much more clear time. where there isn't so much confusion and chaos and lies. It might be a lot more clear in the coming months. So, okay, I think that's what I wanted to talk about. And one of the best ways to get clear, here's my little ad, everybody. I do have my beginner foundations astrology course about how to read your own chart. And so that is something that I'm going to put information below. I encourage you, if you have ever been curious about your own chart, or you're just really at a place where you're like, I really do want to know what I'm here to do. I do a lot on the north and south nodes of the moon. And I talk a lot about, how to decode your own destiny, because each one of these transits is impacting us all in a different way. So all this Aries energy is in my third house of communication. Where is all the energy for you? Where is this Mars in Leo? Where is Leo in your chart? And so you can take this, it's for non-astrologers and astrologers alike, but if it's a very beginner course where I try to really break it down for you. So that information is below. And just be good to yourself, be kind. It could be a little bit of a rocky weekend. It's going to be busy. No matter what, it's going to be very energetic. So think that's what I'm saying. Maybe the volcano isn't erupting, but there's something coming up. There's no doubt about that. There's something coming up. This Mars action is challenging that Pluto and saying, come on, let's get it going. Let's get it going. We got to move. And there are creative ways and creative self-expression. So if you are planning on going to a protest this weekend, I know there's a big one on the 19th, make some creative signs, do something self-expressive, but protect yourself. Just be aware of your surroundings. And if you're not called to do that, that's okay. Do what you are called to do. This is what I'm being called to do. So unlock that code and do what your piece of this puzzle is. Because it's going to be a very I am time as Aries emerges. So the I is important, but so is the community. So it's kind of like figuring out who you are, so then you can be a part of the solution within a community. And we each have our own individual gifts and our own individual callings. So like I said, if you're going out to protest this weekend, be careful. If you've got a big Easter celebration or some sort of Passover or whatever celebration, really just, breathe into it. Don't get in arguments with people. It's not really a great weekend to sort of test boundaries unless you're prepared for consequences, because I think it's a very consequential time. That's what I would say about the next week is the word is consequences, explosions, consequences, sort of seeing this all playing out in real time. So I think that's it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, and share. If you are called to take my class, it's only $79, and there's a lot of good stuff in it, including 2 live sessions with Zoom calls with me, and also my teacher, Steven Forrest, who volunteered to do a live with all of us. So, okay, well, the cosmos is conspiring to help us. Actually, the universe is. And there's a reason and a season for it all. So until next time, hang in there.